I see a lot of teachers, a lot of faculty, a lot of professors. Many of the professors from United States have been my professors in the program. I wish I would have been taught by the teachers that are participating to this webinar. It seems that we lost Laura and Dan, so I will present our first speaker, that is Tiffin University's Vice President for Institutional Effectiveness. It used to be the Vice President for Academic Affairs. So in this position, she was supposed to assure quality and rigorosity to the online programs so that they will be accredited and accepted by the American authorities. So Teresa, there you go.
Hello, everyone. And yes, I'm Teresa Shaffer. I have the privilege of working with our international programs, and I've worked with Marius and the team that's part of this panel today for a very long time. In fact, I've hired a few of the people that you're going to be talking to today, or going to be working with today. I am really blessed to be working for Tiffin University, but as you can see, we're kind of all in a really different place these days with the pandemic. I'm coming to you from my dining room area in Tiffin, Ohio. As you can see, our other panelists are in their own homes because we cannot be in our offices, in our classrooms, and those kinds of things. So it's been a real upheaval this last few months for all of us. But I'm blessed really for two reasons to be with Tiffin. We have a long history of working with international programs. I mean, we've been with our Bucharest partners for over 20 years, and we've had other partnerships in other parts of the world. So we have a pretty good feel for what's going on internationally as well, what's happening in our own country. And so that gives us kind of a leg up. The other thing that we've done very well at Tiffin is we were an early adopter of online learning. We started doing online learning in the early 2000s, 2002, 3, 4. I was one of the first people to teach online, as was Dr. Haan and Dr. Mays. And so we've got a history of about 20 years or so of things that worked and things that didn't, and trial and error. And we've learned through all those years that this is hard work. It's hard work for our students. It's hard work for our faculty members. And a lot of time administrators simply don't understand that. They think, oh, it's online. You can do it whenever you want. It's convenient. It's easier. All of you know, and especially in these last few months, it's not easier. It's hard to keep our students incentivized. It's hard to keep ourselves engaged. And so we're going to spend a lot of time in our conversation together talking about some of those techniques that we've learned. As Marius told you, one of the responsibilities that I have is our accreditation. And in the early years, people were very skeptic on online learning. Could you learn that way? Could you teach that way? Was it similar? Could you really understand the material and go forward? Or was it just a fast way or a cheap way to get your degree? And for those of us that have been involved in this learning all these years, it is definitely far from easy. And we have had to prove the rigors that happen both when you're seated in front of each other or online. Certainly, it's different. We have to remember that. So Tiffin University has always used the motto of a class is a class, students are students. Whether that class is taught face-to-face, which is how we teach our executive MBA in Romania, and how we teach our Bachelor's of Business Administration is face-to-face in a classroom. That's our preference. That's our students' preference. But for the last couple months, we haven't been able to do that. So, but we're still teaching the same class, the same learning outcomes. Our students have to manage and be successful in those outcomes. And then again, we talk about a class is a class and a student's a student. Whether that student takes that course online or accelerated or hybrid or face-to-face, they're still taking the same class. So our transcripts at Tiffin University doesn't say, oh, that student took it online, or oh, that class was offered hybrid. It says we have the same standard. If it's a class, if it's a Management 201 class, it's a Management 201 class. And the faculty have to know those learning outcomes. So that's the biggest key to making sure that our accreditors understand that it's the same expectation all the way through. So that's really important for all of us as we, again, Tiffin has been one of the leaders in online learning for about 2 decades. And so we've proven to some of the big boys that online learning is, excuse me, something that can be done very successfully. These last 2 months has thrown everybody else into an online world. Who knew a few months ago that all of us would be teaching all of our classes in some form of remote or online learning, and that's very different. So it's harder. We need some more support. We need more tools. And one of the most important lessons I think we've learned is that to be good educators and to be good learners, we have to learn to adapt. We have to adapt to circumstances. As a teacher in front of a class, you adapt every day, every minute to what something is said or something that's happened or what happened in the news this morning. You have to work that into your lessons. Online is no different. You have to bring that personality and adapt every day to how those students are learning. And one of the most important things that we've all learned is that it has to be done differently. I'd like to share my screen with you to show you who we've got with us today so that we all understand who's going to be in front of us. I'm blessed to be joined by 3 of my colleagues. Dr. Perry Haan will pick up this baton here in a few minutes and talk about his current experience. Perry's been our former dean of the business school and very, very involved in online learning and international learning. Then you'll hear from Dr. Laura Mays, who is our specialist in education. She is our director of our Romanian program. And then Dan Mays is an affiliate faculty member for us. And we're blessed to have Dan as part of this because he's taught for so many different schools, as most of us have. We've not just taught for Tiffin University online, but Dan brings a very special mix for how we're doing some things elsewhere. So as we move through today's program, we're going to try to talk about some specific lessons that we've all learned. We're not going to spend a lot of time on the tools because there are so many tools that you can use for how you engage your students or what platform you're using. That information's out there. We want to talk to you about what we've experienced. So you're going to listen to those challenges and those things that we've had. We're going to talk about how do you redesign a face-to-face course. That's what Dr. Haan has had to do very quickly because he intended to be in Romania teaching with you. We're going to talk about enhancing the experience of both the faculty and the student, and then different pedagogical or teaching methods for online learning. So I'm going to stop now with my part of the presentation, but certainly we'll have a time for questions and answers at the end so that we can help you through this. And I'm going to ask Perry Haan to now have a little bit of time to share his thoughts.
Okay. Thanks, Dr. Shafer. Appreciate your introduction, and feel free to put up my slide anytime you're ready to do so. Yeah, I did, as Dr. Shafer mentioned, all 4 of us who are speaking today have been involved in the Bucharest program for a long period of time. We're in our 18th cohort, and I go back to cohort 1. So I've been there kind of from the beginning, and I've also been, as Dr. Shafer mentioned, as all 4 of us have been teaching online for the past 20 years. One of the things when online first started to become something that schools were doing, I was very interested in doing it because I could, you could see this was going to be a trend in education and something that a lot of schools look like they're going to get involved with. And as Dr. Shafer referred to, when all of us started, I think we were all very concerned about whether or not the quality of education was going to be the same online as it is in the traditional classroom. And I know, especially at the beginning, I spent a lot of time going to some seminars and reading up on the things that were being done at the time and are still being done in this area. And one of the things that she mentioned is that all the studies I've ever seen, and I'm sure I haven't seen all of them, suggest that the outcomes, right, that the things that students are learning in online classes are the same as they're learning in a traditional classroom. And that's always made me feel pretty comfortable about working in this environment. And I think that's important, right, that we understand that it's possible, at least, for students to achieve the same things that they're doing in a traditional classroom. So, as Dr. Shafer mentioned, I'm supposed to be with all of you this week. We're supposed to start a seated class. We started a bachelor's program, as some of you may know, in the fall in Bucharest, and it's our first class. And I was supposed to be teaching them a math and a personal finance course that started this week in Bucharest. We moved the class online, as we did, as all of you have been doing and moving things online. And so it's a little bit different for me from the standpoint that most of the students that we have taught online are master's students, MBA students, some bachelor students, but even a lot of them are adult students. We've also started a PhD program at Tiffin, and so those courses are all online. So I've, for the last it'll be 3 weeks tomorrow, actually the class ends tomorrow, have been doing an online bachelor's class with students, some of whom might have been your students last year. They're the more traditional ages, we would say, students. And so I just wanted to talk briefly first a little bit about sort of what I did and how I did this, and a couple things that I've learned, and also kind of how some other things sort of generally I've learned over the years teaching online. So this class was supposed to meet, or they've already been through 2 sessions with other colleagues of mine who've been to Bucharest both in October and January. And so the class meets 5 days a week for 3 days, and they're taking 2 courses at a time, and it runs from morning till later in the afternoon. So as best I could, I tried to replicate that to some degree online. So the way the course has been run is we've been meeting at 1300 hours your time, which is still 6 o'clock in the morning here, in a live session where I've talked about what we're going to be doing that day. So I've kind of talked a little bit about the content that we're going to be reviewing that day, that they're going to be doing in an assignment, talk a little bit about the assignment itself for the first class at 1300, and then gave them an assignment to work on for a couple of hours, all right? And then at 1600 each day, Monday through Friday, for the last 3 weeks, we met again, talked a little bit about if there are any questions about the assignment that they submitted, and then talked about the other class. We did the math class first, and then the finance class second. And again, same concept, talked a little bit about what we're doing and what the assignments were, okay? So like I said, the class is ending tomorrow, and the students have been amazing. We've always sort of, we always felt we got the best of the best in our MBA classes in Bucharest anyway, and for those of us who've taught there over the years. And one of the reasons all of us have come as often as we do is that we really enjoy working with the students that we've had. Well, these bachelor students, and again, and much younger than most of our MBA students, have been amazing in a different way, right? I mean, I'm sure, as all of you know, since you're working with students who are used to coming to a traditional classroom, working online is something new for most of them. And the thing I think I worried most about this whole format was them persisting, right? I was afraid they might get burned out, or they might get tired, or they might get sick of this, every day for 3 weeks doing the work. And they haven't. Or at least if they have, they haven't told me. Or at least it hasn't showed up in their work. They've showed up every day. They've done the work. They're turning things in, and they're all going to finish the class in the next couple of days successfully. And it's really been an amazing group of students who've really hung in there. So that's kind of the format. And again, I've just kind of used that format here because it tended to work with, I was hoping it would at least work with the format of the students. I've asked them during the term what they thought we should do differently or the same. They seem to think the 1 hour of kind of instruction followed by a couple of hours for them to work on the assignments for each class, that seemed to work okay. I thought maybe one of the things we always talk about when it comes to teaching online is don't try to do too much live, all right? And I was really a little concerned that an hour at a time like that might be too much. And I've asked them about it a couple of times this week. And now, not all of them are responding, but the ones that have responded said they thought that was fine. An hour was fine at a time, okay? I will say one of the downsides of this, as I'm sure you can probably figure out, is that there's a lack of watching what's going on in the class and the nonverbal reaction, all right? There's 18 students in the class. Probably 6 or 7 of them have been pretty actively participating in the class in terms of, when I ask a question in this format like we're in now, they'll respond either by typing in a response or using their microphone. The other dozen or so have not done much in the class, done much responding, but they have completed their assignments. So that's obviously the more important part of it. It'd be nice if the rest of them participated more. I know a couple of them said they don't have a microphone. I mean, one of the challenges of this, and I'm sure probably even more for you than it is for me, in the format that we're in with, again, the graduate students, is I don't know what kind of Wi-Fi connections that your students have, or what your Wi-Fi connections might be, or what kind of computer access they've had. We've even had mentioned kind of in a couple of these other bullet points here shortly in the class over the last 3 weeks. But overall, I think it's gone pretty well. These other bullet points are just some things that I think make sense kind of generally in terms of working with students. And again, these are a little bit older than those of you who are doing high school do, but I suspect they're kind of similar issues. I had them doing something every day, right? Again, part of that had to do with that was the format that they'd been using in the seated class, the classroom that they'd been in. And so that's why I tried to stick to that format, so that because they were familiar with it from the seated class. And again, they seem to do quite well in terms of getting the work done from day to day. I was very impressed with that. One of the things I made a point of doing was making sure that I was giving them feedback every day. So, and I'm exhausted, quite frankly. When this is over tomorrow, I think I'm going to get a lot of sleep in this weekend, because it really has been, there were, like I said, there are 18 students in the class, and they were doing at least 1 or 2 assignments in each class each day. And so when they were done, they were done at noon here at 12 o'clock, 1700 your time. And I spent the afternoon reading and grading these things and getting back to them. And so it's a lot of work. But if they're going to do the work every day, I wanted them to get the feedback and know that they were in all their cases actually on doing things well. And if they had some problems, just kind of let them know where they're at. But I really think this kind of consistent daily kind of interaction and daily kind of keeping up with the feedback and the assessment's a very important part of it. One of the things I learned, and kind of goes along to the be available, the next point on here, when this whole online thing started to happen, and the people who are doing research in this area, and I see this in every study I've ever looked at concerning online learning, one of the things I see everybody talk about is that you have to be available for the students. And that doesn't mean you have to be available 24 hours a day, that they can call you or access you online necessarily live, but you have to let them know you're available. For example, when we'd meet for an hour, I'd give them a couple of hours to work on assignments. I left the class site open, so in case somebody had a question, they could type in, and I'd take a look every, 15 or 20 minutes just to see how they were doing. And when they had a question, they type it in, and I might not get back to them until 15 or 20 minutes after they said it, but I wanted them to know that I was there and available to help them. Even when, between the end of the class one day and the beginning the next, I didn't have access live, but they, send me an email, just let me know. One of the other things the students did and turned out to be fabulous was, as we all know, a lot of these younger people are very tech-oriented, and they had already set up a WhatsApp discussion group, okay? And so that's another way that they sometimes will contact me. If you've got your phone and you've got a way for anytime a WhatsApp message comes in, it lets you know they're there. I mean, that I only used it a couple of times, but it was very handy for when they had a question, and it didn't happen to be during the time I was online with them. So, one of the questions that's come up, and again, maybe you've had this thought or you've had this discussion with some other people. Do we have to be available 24 hours a day? I don't know. I mean, I think one of the things we're learning about working remotely and not just in our environment, but in all the people that are working from home these days, is that it's okay to set boundaries, right? It's okay to say, all right, it's 6 o'clock at night or 7 o'clock at night, and I'm gonna not do anything until tomorrow morning, and I'll spend some time with my family and have dinner or whatever you want to do. I'm not suggesting that you have to be available all the time, but to let them know you'll get back to them as soon as reasonable. And it's perfectly fine to tell them, if you try to contact me between 6 p.m., our time here, and tomorrow when class starts at 6 a.m., I may not get back to you until tomorrow at 6 a.m. or 1300 hours your time. Again, I think it's okay to set those kind of limits, right? Flexibility, yeah, this stuff changes. Let me give you a quick example. Last Friday morning, we went to log on, and the platform that we use at Tiffin University is called Moodle. Some of you might be familiar with it. Moodle was down, right? And so luckily, like I said, the students, I knew that they'd put me into their group chat on WhatsApp. So I went in there and told them, and by the time I got to it, about 5:45 our time and 12:45 your time, the students had already come on and said, we can't get into Moodle. We've been trying to do our assignments. And I said, well, don't worry about it. I mean, what I decided to do was cancel the assignment for that morning for the math class. And I said, just get caught up in the next 3 hours from your assignment that you didn't get done from yesterday because you weren't able to get on today. And then we'll start again at 9 o'clock our time, 1600 hours your time, and we'll go on from there, right? So, and again, it wasn't exactly that complicated a decision to make, but it just kind of made sense to, do one less assignment, give them a chance to catch up and be a little bit more flexible, right? Visual stuff, yeah, we all know students, we all are, and especially students today are very visually oriented. And so it makes sense to use, I use PowerPoints. Today we just did a little exercise. We're in this math statistics class. I showed them a website from called 538 that's used in the U.S. A guy in the U.S. who's created this website, and it was a kind of a nice example of some things about probability and some statistics kind of things and how these things are applied in some cases. And it was, in the format that we have through our version of Zoom, I was able to, show them live how these different points on the website. This whole pandemic thing and the models that are being used to predict how many people are going to get sick and be in the hospital and die has been a really interesting example for statistics and sometimes how they work and don't work so well. And that was part of what we were doing today, was talking about some of these pandemic models and how they work and don't work. So last thing, and then I'll turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Mays, expectations, right? And I think we all know this as educators generally. Students want to know what's going on, right? What are the expectations? Letting them know up front. And again, I suspect all of you already do this in your regular classroom, and it's the same thing, right? In this environment, that particularly the first day of class, I'm sure, especially in this case, right? I mean, think about how stressful this whole situation's been for us. Think about if you're, in their case, 18, 19, 20 years old, and don't, think about how that, affects them, and that probably they want to be out with their friends even more than we do, kind of in the environment that they're in, sitting by themselves at home, working through this situation. The more you can let them know up front about what they're getting into, I think the better. I guess I'll find out when the class is over. But I really think that's an important, again, it's important for all the things that we do. And I think in this environment online, and especially with the situation that we're all in, it's even more important. So with that, thank you for listening, and I will turn this over to my colleague, Dr. Laura Mays.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Haan. And Dr. Shafer, you can share the slide anytime. Thank you all for participating in this today. I see some of you are from various areas of Romania. And most of the areas that you are coming from, I've had the pleasure over the last 20 years of visiting many times. So I'm very happy to be able to do something with all of you in this particular format, something that really wasn't even available when I first started working in Romania. Now, the pedagogy of online learning, some people will tell you there is no pedagogy involved with online learning. And that goes all the way to the people who will say, now that we have online learning available, the pedagogy is much better than it was when we were only able to deliver our classes face-to-face with our students. Both people, of course, both people who will say that are wrong, all right? What the biggest thing we have to know about online and in-person teaching is what is on the screen right here. They are two different animals. If you did not know that a few months ago, you certainly know it now, as you attempt to put classes that were meant to be taught with the students in front of you in an online format. I just saw a question about, what do you do when you have like 30 students in a class and you have more than one class that you have to work with at a time, and some of them are elementary or lower students and some are high school students? That's a great question. And I think that, we're all still in the process of trying to answer questions like that because they're new. It's new to all of us. Okay. The first thing about it, as we always say, is you have to be adaptable. And probably some of you saw something about adaptability when we first started the webinar, when I was not able to use my computer and my husband and I had to adapt to using only one computer together. These things happen all the time. I think one of the things too, based on a lot of what Dr. Haan just said, and probably from your own experiences so far, the type of planning that you have to do for an online class and an in-person class is completely different. Obviously, the execution or the delivery of the courses completely different. When you haven't had the opportunity to be trained to teach online, which the four of us have. I mean, we took courses on how to teach online. Most of you, some of you may have had that experience, but most of you probably have not. You're being asked to do an almost impossible task, but think about it. Regardless of what you've been doing, you've done it. I mean, you have made some adjustments, and you're trying, as based on your presence in our seminar today, our webinar, you're trying to do it even better. For some of you, you will never be teaching any more online classes, I hope, in the future. I mean, when we all go back to whatever we call normal, moving on, maybe you'll be with your students all the time once again. I know in the United States, some schools are thinking about having classes with the students coming into the school 2 days a week and having them be online another 2 or 3 days a week. I have no idea if that's what's happening in Romania, but these are the kinds of things that this pandemic is changing. All right. The advantages and disadvantages of both are I'm sure, very apparent to you right now, and I don't want to waste time talking about them because I think we need to get to the question and answer period. And again, as I already mentioned, the biggest problem we have, and that we have to overcome one way or another, is we are being forced to teach courses that were designed to be taught in person online. And we're trying to help you think of better ways of doing that, just based on the fact that we've had a lot more experience than most of you. And we're also hoping that in the question and answer session, if if you have had experience with working online with students, that you will share what you have learned as well. All right. Limited efficacy, limited efficiency is kind of something that you just have to accept. Even as well as Dr. Haan said, some of our students are accepting working with him online. It isn't the most efficient way of delivering what he had planned to do. It could be more efficient if he had planned to do it from the very beginning. So adjustment, adaptability, and are not going to be optimal, but it's something that right now, as we start our question and answer session, oh, I'm sorry, we're not doing the question and answers yet. Dr. May, the other Dr. May sitting right here, still has something to impart. Okay. Go ahead, Dr. May. Yeah.
Bună ziua. I'm going to start my discussion, and I'm going to keep it very brief, but I'm going to start my discussion by talking a little bit more about my background, because I think it's relevant to what I'm going to be saying. First of all, I want to point out that my PhD is in clinical psychology, so I'm used to dealing with psychological issues, and I really think that a lot of the anxiety that people feel about online teaching is due to the psychological aspect and the unfamiliarity with the experience, and not necessarily reflecting a lack of capability in how you're doing your work. The second thing I want to say is I've been teaching online for about 20 years. I've also been teaching face-to-face in the United States, and I've been teaching in Romania periodically for starting at about the same time there. So I have a familiarity both with your culture, and not nearly as much as I would like to have, but enough to be conversant with what's going on over there. And also background in both face-to-face and online. I've also taught online for and created online courses for Tiffin University, as well as 3 other universities. So the reason I bring this up is, let me say, first of all, teaching online is like playing the piano with heavy gloves on. And what I mean by that is, when you're trying to play the piano, if you were wearing giant gloves, it would be difficult to have control over how you're presenting the content to the students. The mechanism would constantly be getting in the way. It wouldn't feel familiar to you. You don't get as much feedback from the students as you might have gotten. Students may not be paying attention. As somebody mentioned, they don't have microphones, or claim they don't have microphones. You don't know if they have microphones. All of these technical things, I think it boils down to limited control, limited feedback. But still, after 20 years of doing this, it's been my experience that the students almost always learned what they needed to know. The truth is that teaching high school, teaching in college, you don't get as much feedback as you would like. People show up and say, I was in your class 15 years ago, and what you taught me changed my life. And you're thinking, my goodness, I never realized that I had that kind of impact. And at the time, I didn't know if I was being effective with you or not. So it's similar with online teaching, but it's even worse because you don't get the facial expressions and you don't get the feedback. But they do learn the material they've been asked about or tested on later. As Dr. Haan pointed out, when you do comparative studies of online and similar courses in seated form, the competence of the learners at the end is almost identical. The experience is quite different, but the end result is quite comparable. I think along the line, though, if you do it right, they learn more about collaboration and they learn more about thinking and working independently than they had before. So I have a few keys to online learning that I want to point out for you. The most important thing, in my opinion, is I had to learn to have faith in the new way of teaching. I had to learn the competencies and have confidence in what we were doing. I learned to ask the students more about how they're doing, as Dr. Haan did. Ask them what their experience is. When it's face-to-face, I don't need to. I can judge from their facial expression. In the absence of that, asking solves that problem and completes the loop. As others have pointed out, draw more on outside resources like videos and YouTube. And one other suggestion I have is make the students part of your educational production. Get them involved in either in a group format or individually of creating their own presentations and productions, and have them become part of the educational experience. They'll learn as much from creating as they will from teaching. So those are basically my takeaways from my experience. And now what we'd really like to do is to hear more about what your questions are. I'm going to turn you back over to my good friend and colleague, Marius, to take it away here.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
First of all, I would like to tell you, I don't know if you had the chance to see, there are a lot of people from many cities of the country, and in the same time, they are really feeling connected to you. Unfortunately, due to the high number of participants, we couldn't take them also to the panelists. So it will be up to you to contact them and to answer their personal questions, let's say.
We'll be happy to
but
do
we
that.
we will take the questions that are that have been asked in the Q&A, in the questions and answer section. And I would like to ask Teresa, Dr. Shaffer, since everybody told us what was their experience in online environment, and I know that you have been teaching online for almost 20 years already. I know that you will know how to answer to Christina Koman, that is asking us, I am interested in the approach regarding the student evaluation process. What are the criteria for grading the students? Thank you.
Well, Christina, it's a great question and things that we have to think about. Again, as I said earlier, we have to look at the class outcomes. And so while we're teaching in an online environment, we may do the same kind of evaluation that we would do in a traditional classroom, like a test or a quiz. But as Dr. Dan May said, a lot of the value of teaching online is collaboration. So one of the methods that at Tiffin we push a lot is that practical application, that case management. So group work, small group work, teamwork. It's important that you have a very clear approach. As Dr. Perry Haan said, the students need to know what you expect of them. So if there's going to be a paper, there's going to be a test, there's going to be a presentation, a group work, I really don't look at an evaluation differently, except for participation. When they're sitting in front of me, I've got 20 students and I kind of know who are my loudspeakers and who are my quiet people and people that are paying attention because of the nonverbals. You don't really get that in the online space, so you have to prompt that. Everybody has to respond to a question at least once or respond to their colleagues at least once or twice. So the participation side of the evaluation is a bit different because you need to keep them engaged. You need to keep them going. But as far as the other kinds of evaluations, I use them very similarly, regardless of the modality or the type of teaching I'm doing. It is, again, like I said, a class is a class. They have to learn how to do certain skill sets out of that class. And so you can test those lots of different ways. It's just you have to let the students know what to expect. I hope that helps.
I got the idea. So I would like to take a question from Basim Yassin that seemed not to be Romanian. And I will ask this question to Laura, since she has experience in all the stunts from the former Union of Russian countries. Yeah, you, if I remember well, you had programs also in Taiwan, you had also in Lebanon and so on.
Correct, that's correct.
He has a question regarding language classes. He asks you, what is the best way to teach the language as a subject for non-native speakers according to distance learning?
That's an excellent question. I think the best way always to teach a language, and this does not have anything to do with taking courses, is for people to watch television with subtitles. Now, he may think, well, how does that help me in a course? And I think you'd be amazed. I also believe that you just have to get used to taking the time that you might not otherwise take to explain different words to your students and what different definitions of words are. I mean, I all the time am explaining to my students in Romania some acronyms, US acronyms that they are not familiar with and that we use all the time. So your familiarity with the English language and what you had to learn to be able to communicate effectively in English, I think in this situation is the best thing that you can pass on to your students. I hope that answered your question at least partially. If not, just send me an email and we can get into it in more detail.
Yeah, I would like to add that most of the teaching platforms that are online are giving you the possibility to have closed caption subtitles as you go. So that could help also for the ones that either do not understand all of the words that you are saying, or
that's right. That's right. Much of what I learned, I mean, I don't know a lot of Romanian, but I know some. And so much of what I learned comes from subtitles.
We are having many questions that are, let's say, in a way, they're not covering a general subject. And I'm promising, for example, to Gabriela Covaciu and Alina Udrescu and so on, that we will answer to you offline. So our experts will send you an email answering specifically to your question. I would like to bring, let's say, a little of our culture. And this question, feel free, any of you, to take. The question sounds like this, and I will tell you that in Romania, the teaching load, it is different than the teaching load in the United States. I mean, the professors here have to go through a different load than you are used with. So now I'm presenting you a particular situation. So Carmen Frank is asking you, when you have 9 classes in primary and lower secondary education, 30 students on average, lessons to design, a 30 minutes meet for each class, assignments to check, technical stuff to handle, as we can, feedback to provide, online tests, and so on, apart from a family to take care. It seems overwhelming for me to be available for any individual need. Can you help me settle the right limits?
May I say one thing about that? Because
Go ahead.
I have several teachers who are friends, and they teach in the primary grade. And I think I saw this question and mentioned a little bit about it. What do you do when you have so many courses, which we do not have in college? But in primary grades, even here in the US, people are facing the same thing. And it is overwhelming to them. And what I can do is I can ask them what some of the techniques that they've used are, and then I can send something to the people who want to know about this. That's what I can do to help you, because I don't know what I would do, quite frankly.
If I can add a couple things, I have a lot of school friends, teachers that are doing lots of different things in the primary schools. I have a lot that are special education teachers, speech therapists, occupational therapists, as well as maybe like second grade and fourth grade teachers. And if you're in the classroom, you usually have about 6 or 7 classes that you're involved in. So not as many. But I think one of the things that you need to do is to give yourself a break. You need to know that it's okay to stop, take care of yourself, take care of your family. Like Dr. Haan said, you have to set some boundaries. It is impossible, very overwhelming to expect to have your same day if you would be having it at, like 8 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. You simply cannot do that online.
Yeah.
Many of my friends are taping a lesson. They're actually doing a videotape, and then they're uploading that on that subject. They're also reaching out, collaborating with some of the other teachers. So all the fourth grade teachers get together and do some collaborative meetings and pull all their students together. So they're really counting on each other to do that. What you were able to do with a one-on-one student in a classroom, because you could get the other students busy on a worksheet assignment or something, and then you could help this one student that was struggling, is really very difficult. And you have to count on the parents who may not have been as involved in their students' education or their child's education before, and that burden was all on you. Now it has to be kind of a shared responsibility, and that's very difficult. So as Laura said, I would be glad to share any examples that I have with my friends, but all of them, I have told all of them to just know that you're doing your best. We all know as educators, we have our students at our hearts, and so we are doing our best, but we also have families to take care of, and we have to take care of ourselves. So it is overwhelming. You need to recognize that. As Dan said, this is a psychological impact on all of us. So we do the best that we can. Again, since we were all kind of thrown into this without some of the prior planning that would have gone into it if we had had that time. So my heart is aching for you, because I know it's very difficult.
Yeah. Lower your expectations. You have
Of yourself, yeah.
to. Yeah, of yourself and of the students. And pray that it's a very short temporary situation. If it continues on, they'll have to make some structural changes to the way the program's being arranged. But right now, to maintain the same quality that you were delivering before is an impossible expectation. You're going to have to relegate things more to seat work. It reminds me of the time when I was in Catholic school, and there were 60 different people in several different grades in the same class. And somehow the teachers managed to give us a lot of seat work, a lot of assignments. There wasn't a lot of teaching in the front of the room type of teaching, but we came out with a really good education. But I think the better solution would be if this pandemic is resolved reasonably quickly and we can get back to normal living. But in the meantime, you're going to minimize the damage that this does to them educationally. And I think that's a reasonable expectation.
Yeah, the system put the pressure on faculty, on professors, and on educators. They had to do it this way because they didn't have the time or the chance to redesign. Right. So in a way, we have this teachers are having this responsibility, but in the same time, I am sure that everybody will be flexible when we'll analyze the performance, because everybody knows that in the world, there are people paid to design courses for online teaching.
Exactly.
So, this is not something that a person should do by itself. Yes, it should do it now, but in the long run, the systems or the schools will help designing and creating content for the students. And regarding the boundaries, the right limit, I would like to add up from my in-class experience, especially when in your class you started debates. after class, they will devour you. I mean, they would like to ask you all the questions and to give them the, I was right. So setting boundaries for me, it was in the beginning, especially when I was a young teacher, a young professor for the university, a young prep, I don't know how to translate preparator, whatever. I was scared because I had to tell them no. So we have to learn also to tell them no. I mean, yes, you have all my attention. I am trying to give you the most time, but in the same time, please understand that I have also my personal activities. So setting boundaries should be, let's say, easier from now on. We have also questions, and there are many asking almost the same thing.
Mhm.
And I will ask Perry, since he had this experience lately. Which techniques do you use to make sure that students are paying attention during a class?
That's a good question. Like I said, in the format we were using, the students didn't use their cameras very much, so I wasn't watching what they were doing. Most of the time, they weren't using their cameras, and I was okay with that. I mean, part of the problem if you've done this kind of thing in this kind of format like we're in now is if you get too many people in using their cameras, it takes up the bandwidth, and it becomes a problem in terms of communicating. Right? You get kicked off. In fact, we've had some students get kicked off. And I can see them in the who's in class in the attendance or who's there, and that's about as best as I can do. Like I said earlier, they're keeping up with the work. They're turning the work in on time, and they're doing a good job, which suggests to me that they're paying attention when we are meeting and when we're discussing things. Like I said, probably 2/3 of them have made very few contributions to the class. I know a couple of times I asked individuals who hadn't responded for a response, and usually they would type in something. At least I knew they were there, and that was about as best as you could do. It's a good question, right? It's a different environment in that regard. As far as you really don't know, and I think Dr. Dan May said that when people are online, you can't really tell for sure if they're there. The only thing I can suggest, like I said, if they're turning in the work and they're doing good work, I guess that's the best indication that they're paying some attention to what's going on by the fact that they're submitting good work. And that's it. But it is one of the trade-offs in this environment compared to being in class. In fact, I've told several people that when you come, and this is a group I hadn't worked with before. And so, after the first day of class, you can just kind of tell from the nonverbal, much less the responses that you get, how it's going. And it's much more difficult to measure, at least for me, it's much more difficult to measure that in this environment than it is in a traditional class.
One of the things that I know that you all are doing, but you didn't said it to us now, is you are using a lot of teamwork. So you are asking the students to create different assignments in groups of, most of the time in groups of 5. So sometimes this helps because they will be ashamed of their peers, of their colleagues. So they will do it, they will participate, and they will be active just because they don't want to be perceived badly by their colleagues. So this is one of the techniques that I know you're using.
At times.
Well, and the other,
And that's great. Go ahead, Teresa.
well, the other thing is it helps our grading. I'm grading 5 projects, and maybe the interactions of those groups within those projects as I do a self-evaluation of your group members, but I'm not reading 17 projects plus interactions. So it does help with the grading mechanism. We do have one more slide. I don't know if you want me to put it up now, Marius, of how to contact us or to follow up in terms of getting some additional information.
Just give me, to be honest, we didn't expect it so many questions, but some of them, and okay. I want to, I'm not the most empathic person, but in the same time, I'm a little emotional. So I would like to end up with a message from Ana Bordan that says, we do all of this because we love kids. Our school might not help us or do anything for us, but we are doing everything from our resources. So I am sure that every educator, as much as they use their emotional intelligence, as much as they use their love for the kids, I am sure that all the participants from this webinar will do great. And as a university, but also as a person, we are thanking you for being able to move from the offline on-class education to the online for our kids. I have a young son of 18 years old that will go through the baccalaureate this year, and I want to thank all the professors for what they are doing. They might not receive the right thinking from their schools, but I'm assuring them that we all, universities, normal people, and so on, we are thanking them for being involved in teaching our kids. If you have anything to add, if not, I will assure everyone that we will answer all the questions, the ones in the chat, the ones in the Q&A, and if you want to address to any of our friends, experts, you have here all the contacts. In case you have more general questions, you can address it to us and we will provide you with an answer from the right person. So here are our contacts.
Could I ask if you do contact us individually, if you please would just indicate in the subject area that you are, you have participated in the seminar, okay? So we will know before. Just look at the email as something that, okay, I'll get back to this sometime. If we know that you participated in the seminar right away, in the subject matter, and the subject line, then we'll get back to you right away.
I want to thank everybody that's participated today. This is a real testament to education in the future of higher education, whether it's at the primary or secondary level or the university level. We have a lot of people who care about our youth and their educational ventures and the future of education. Yep. There's lots of training that need to take place. There's lots of support that needs to take place. But this is testament. This is a witness to caring and taking care of our future. And I really applaud all of you for your efforts.
Thank you everybody for participating. We will stop our meeting right now. And again, with the promise that we will answer all the questions and with the hope that we all will do our best to teach our kids. Have a nice day.
Bye.